So without further ado, let me introduce Mr. Alastair Miller.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction, and I echo Lee's sentiments about the food. That was absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much. I was last here, I believe it was October of 2022. So it's been a couple of years, more than a couple of years, since I last spoke with you all. And there's been quite a lot of progress along I-35. I'm sure as you drive the corridor, you're seeing a lot of construction activity out there. So there's been quite a bit of progress. Where I would like to start today is with one of TxDOT's missions, which is, as you can see on the screen here, help #end the streak. And what that is in reference to is the fact that since, and I have my notes here, since November 7th, 2000, so it's been almost 25 years now. Unfortunately, there's been a death on a Texas roadway every day since that time. Yep. So one of TxDOT's missions and goals is to end that streak. During that time, there's been more than 87,000 deaths. And that's due to, not surprisingly, impaired drivers is one of the causes. Approximately 37% is what the statistics tell us. Distracted drivers, about 1 in 9. And another factor here is speeding, which is about 1,400 a year. So again, this is a very important mission for TxDOT, and just want to bring awareness to this challenge that we all have ahead of us. Okay, so as Lee mentioned, I'm here to talk about the I-35 NEX program. And I'm just starting us off with a slide here that speaks to the timeline. And really, this is just to emphasize the fact that this is a project that's been in the works for quite some time. You can see here that starting back in 2011 is when this all started, with a preliminary environmental linkage study. And I can't see the screen, so I may have the acronym wrong, but it was an initial environmental study that was developed to determine what can be done within this area of the corridor to relieve the congestion and address safety concerns. From there, I won't read all through the bullets, but to give you an idea of the timeline itself, in 2019, this project was actually environmentally approved. And then subsequently in 2021, we awarded the first contract to construction, and I'll get into the 5 different contracts that we have in a moment. And then looking forward, we're anticipating that this project will be fully open to traffic in around the 2030 timeframe. So about 5-6 more years before we have all of those projects complete. Okay, before I went into the individual projects, I thought I'd just show a typical section or an animation of what the facility is going to look like. And right now, if you're looking at the video, what you're seeing are the existing main lanes. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that the existing main lanes, ramps, frontage roads, they're largely going to stay as is. They're not going to be reconstructed. Your access is not going to change. And now what you're seeing on the screen, as we've elevated here, is the added capacity, which is going to be added through elevated lanes or bridges, which include 2 general purpose lanes and 1 HOV lane in each direction. And the reason why the lanes are elevated is due to the constrained corridor. As everyone knows, as you drive along 35, you see all of the businesses along the right-of-way, so it just wasn't feasible to relocate all of those businesses. So therefore, the elevated lane structures. Okay, so here's a map of the full program of projects, starting at the north end at FM 1103, and I'll just touch on the full limits first of all. It goes all the way down to Frost Bank Center, which is just on the northeast side of downtown. It's approximately 20 miles. There are going to be direct connectors at Loop 1604 to and from the west. The connectors to and from the east or the southeast direction, that'll be a part of a future project. And then if we work our way a little bit further south, there are direct connectors to and from 410 North, which will take you to and from the airport. And then also, kind of difficult to see, but there are connectors to 410 South. It's a yellow color. It's in the bottom, kind of the bottom side of the figure. So that's the full limits and scope of the work. There's going to be 5 implementation projects just due to the overall magnitude of this program. Two of which are under construction, and one very soon to be under construction in a couple weeks, which Violetta is going to help manage, which is the South Phase 3. But the north project is from, as I said, 1103 at the north end down to FM 3009. Then the I-35 NEX Central project goes from FM 3009 down to 410 North, which is in the red shade. Continuing to work our way south is the Design Build South Phase 1 project, which goes from 410 North down to the 410 South interchange. And then to finish off from the 410 South interchange to Frostbank Center is our South Phase 2 project. And then, as I just mentioned, our South Phase 3, which goes along 410 South. What I didn't touch on real quick were the timelines associated with these projects. 2 of them have been awarded to construction, which is the Central Design Build, which was awarded back in 2021. And then the South Phase 1 project was awarded back in it says 2023. I believe that's a typo, it should be 2022. Okay, so one of the benefits or the purpose of these projects is the travel time savings. Due to the congestion in the corridor, everybody knows as we drive through 35, it's frustrating and takes quite a bit of time to get from point A to point B. And in this figure or graphic, point A being Frostbank Center and point B being FM 3009. Without the project, it takes about 29 minutes to travel that distance if no project were to be implemented. With the project, we're anticipating that about 1/3 of the traffic will be up on those elevated lanes, thereby relieving those existing main lanes to the point where that same trip on the existing main lanes will take about 17 minutes. And if you're up on those elevated lanes, it'll take only 15 minutes. So anywhere from a 41 to a 48% travel time savings. Just to touch on a few of the specifics of the actually the design build projects, which are well underway. The I-35 NEX Central design build project, again, the limits from 410 North up to FM 3009. The contractor is Alamo NEX Construction, which is a joint venture between Ferrovial Construction and Weber. It started in 2021 and design somewhat recently finished early last year in March 2024. But with that, given that it's a design build, we didn't have to wait for design to be complete before we actually started construction. So you can see on this slide, it shows that we started construction in June of 2022. Not too long before I visited with you guys in October of that year. And we're expecting that this project will be open late 2027. And the cost is 1.5 billion, and I guess one of the items of interest is when is it going to be done, and this particular project we're about 51% complete right now. Just a few items on the South Phase 1 design build project from 410 South up to 410 North. The contractor for this one is Lone Star Constructors, NEX, which is a joint venture between Flora Enterprises and Austin Bridge and Road. This project actually started in 2022, and they were able to get their design going in 2023. Construction is underway, and middle of last summer is when it started, and we're expecting it to be complete in early 2022. This is a $700 million project with construction being about 31% complete today. right, so I'm going to move on to some project construction updates. And since this is mostly a bridge project, I'm just going to focus on the bridge elements, starting with the bridge foundations and drill shafts, and I'll work my way up to the deck as we go through the next several slides. So starting with the bridge foundations, you can see over on the right that there's 1,680 drill shafts, where we're about 73% complete at this point in time. South has 548 drill shafts, where we're about 32% complete. So a little fun fact that has been added to this presentation is to try and put this into perspective. So if we were to take all of these drill shafts and stack them on top of one another, it would be 4 times the height of Mount Everest. Obviously the foundations of drill shafts are in the ground. Couldn't really think of a good item to equate it to, so I went with the height of Mount Everest. But for Mount Everest, and one thing I'll note here is you can see that it's dark. We had a couple questions at the table about the fact that we see things happening, but not really seeing a lot of workers out there during the day. And that is because a lot of the work is being performed at night, and that is by design, because a lot of the operations, as you can imagine, lifting beams, pouring deck, things like that, require lane closures. So what we try to do is encourage the work to be done at night, off-peak hours, thereby a lot of the work being done at night. Okay, moving on to bridge columns. We have more than 1,100 columns on the central project, which are mostly complete now at 71%. The south project, we have 489 columns, approximately 21% complete. And again, well, what does that equate to? 39 times the height of the Empire State Building if we were to stack all of these columns on top of one another. Okay, continuing to move up in our bridge structure are what we call bent caps. And there's 2 videos going here that depict 2 types of bent caps. The one on the left, the crane's hiding one of the columns there, but there's actually 2 columns that hold up this cap. And the reason for that is it allows for space for an at-grade ramp to go underneath it. So that would be the reason for what we call a straddle cap at this particular location. And then over on the right is what we call a traditional hammerhead cap, where we don't have that obstruction below. In terms of progress, on the central, we have 830 caps, where we're about halfway finished. South, we have 310 caps. We're just getting started, so we haven't quite made it to 10% yet, but making good progress. The other thing not depicted here, but I will note, because you'll see it as you drive in the corridor, some of these caps are precast, like both of these that were just hoisted into place. And then there are also others that are cast in place. And that's where you'll see formwork erected. And what happens, they bring in a pump truck and pump that concrete into those forms. Then after they set, they release the forms and you have your caps. So 2 different methodologies for building those caps. And what the caps hold are the concrete beams. So here you can see a beam set. This one's being done during the day, and that's because they were able to do it without impacting traffic. Most of the beam sets are actually being done at night or over the weekends. For the central project, we have just short of 5,000 beams that need to be fabricated and set. The south project has 1,700 beams. And if you were to string all of those beams end to end, that would be the distance, pretty close to the distance between San Antonio and Waco. So a significant amount of concrete. That was a question that was asked at our table, is how much concrete is going into these projects. I don't have an answer, unfortunately, for how much concrete, but a significant amount. And then lastly, the bridge decks. For the central project, there's 886 spans. So that's a span from cap to cap, to the tune of 5.9 million square feet of bridge deck. For the south project, there's 2.4 million square feet of bridge deck. So to try and put that into perspective, that's about 173 football fields in terms of area of concrete deck that we're going to be building. And maybe I didn't clarify this at the beginning, but this is specifically for the central and the south phase 1 projects. I haven't included the north project, the south phase 2, or the south phase 3 projects in these statistics. So these numbers are obviously going to grow from there. So there's a number of different ways that you can find out more information about this series of projects. There's a website, I-35NEX.com. There's a phone number that you can call to find out more information, or email I-35NEX@textdot.gov, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or other opportunities. The scan over on the right side will take you to the I-35NEX website, and you can even, from that website, that's for the I-35NEX program, you can drill down into the 5 specific projects to find out more. For the question slide, I thought I would just run this video, and where we were at here is we're approaching IKEA by 1604. So you're able to see the progress that's being made on what I just went through, the columns. Some of them have caps on there, and we're about to approach beams and deck. And as the video stops, you'll see IKEA up there on the left. We're heading northbound here. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes, ma'am.
I-10 and 281 both have HOV lanes. Are you going to provide them?
Yes. Yeah, can't point them out here in this video because we don't have the striping down, but there will be 2 general purpose lanes and 1 HOV lane in each direction.
And why was Tupperware in the parking lot this morning?
I had heard it was a parking lot. I didn't hear the reason for it yet, but I'll be finding out when I get back to the office. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you for your presentation. I knew very little about the beams and the cross stuff and all the cement it takes and how deep you have to go. Very interesting, very informative. Question I had was, where does the money come from this? I figured gasoline tax and other things, but could you explain a little bit about how the cost is arrived at?
Yes, in terms of funding and how the projects are paid for, you're absolutely right. It largely comes from the gas tax, and there is a blend or a mix of federal funding and state funding associated with these projects. The North project is one where we haven't secured all of the funding yet. We are anticipating that we will get it, but it's not fully funded at this point in time. But it is a mix of federal and state funds.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The fact that this is all bridging, earthquakes have brought this kind of thing down in California. Do we have to consider that at all? There have been some small earthquakes.
There is an extensive geotechnical, number 1, exploration that's done at the beginning of design to determine what type of soils we have. And then in terms of designing the foundations, the bridge elements and caps, those conditions are all taken into consideration. I can't speak to the extent of the earthquakes going into this design, but there are requirements and guidelines that the engineers have to follow.
You mentioned you have caps that are precast and some that are done in forms. Why are you doing both? Is there?
So the reason for both is impacts to traffic. So there are cases in certain locations where it'd be way more impactful to the traffic to form it up and cast it in place. You have all of this formwork that needs to be erected. You have to pour the concrete, let it set, strip the forms, etc., which is way more impactful to traffic than to shut it down for a night and then come in and set those precast caps as you saw in those videos. So that's the primary motivation, is the speed in which they can set those caps and construct them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always amazed when I drive in this section that there's so many workers. And I'm wondering, what's the safety record? I hope it's 0 incidents, but can you tell me what precautions are taken for the workers?
We do have a pretty robust safety program for both of our contractors. They take the lead with those safety programs. And I don't have the statistics with me on hand. Certainly there are what are called recordables when someone maybe cuts a finger or twists an ankle or something like that. Those are recordables that are noted. I will say that given the magnitude of these projects and the number of employees that we do have working, the safety record has been very good, but I don't have the statistics off the top of my mind. Yes, sir.
So thank you again for your presentation, very informative. Are there penalty considerations in the contract for timeliness? If the contractors do not finish on schedule, are there considerations that would encourage them monetarily to finish on time? And if they don't, they gotta pay.
Yes, we have both of those situations. We have incentives and disincentives on both projects, and I'm speaking to the two design build projects now. They are phased milestones, so I'll speak to the central project as an example. There is an incentive to open up the southbound elevated lanes that connect to 1604 and to 410 North early first. There's a date. And if they are able to achieve that date, then there is a monetary incentive if they're able to do that. And it's daily, up to a certain amount. And then there's also an incentive for the northbound direction as well. There's the incentive. On the disincentive side, if they're not complete with the entire project, we call it substantial completion. If they're not substantially complete by date certain, so for Central it's August of 2027, then there's daily liquidated damages that are assessed to the contractor.
Did I understand you to say that all the funding is not in place
Specifically for the North project.
which is what this is?
Not this particular one.
Oh,
No.
okay.
No, if I can.
I was just wondering, what happens if work starts? So you have not started work on the North project yet?
Correct.
Okay,
And if I
thank
can
you.
get to the map, I'll be able to explain how that's going to work, because you're probably wondering, well, how do you get up to the bridges if the project is not there? It's kind of difficult to see here. The yellow circles with the elevated lane structures is what that symbol's intended to represent. Those are the access points. So if you're able to, I don't know if I can point, but the one that is just north of 1604 along 35, that seems to be kind of in the middle of the project, that is an access point. So it's likely that the Central project will be complete before the North project is. You will still be able to access and get off those elevated lanes at that point, which is, as you can see, is right by Cibolo Creek, close to the Retama Park, is where you'll be able to get on and off the facility.
Well, Alastair, we want to thank you ever so much for your presentation. Very informative.